Hi, I'm Kenny Anderson, Director of Multicultural Affairs for the City of Huntsville, and welcome to Impact. Each week we bring you information about exciting things that are happening right here in our community, and today will be no different. I have the privilege today of talking with a special person who's doing special work for our city, and I'm going to talk to him today about all of the great stuff that he's done. Now, he's not a newbie to the city, but he's certainly working in a new capacity. He's none other than Mark McCarter, senior writer with the city blog of the City of Huntsville. Mark, welcome to the broadcast.
Kenny, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. You know, I just introduced you and I said you're not a newbie to the city, so people looking at you will probably recognize you because of your legacy of work in the journalism industry here in this community. Talk a little bit about your backstory.
Well, I'm not sure how much of a legacy it is. A little tiny mugshot that lived in the Huntsville Times for about 18 years. I was at the Huntsville Times as a columnist for about 18 years. Had a great time there, and then have been with the City of Huntsville since last fall, working for City Blog. I was primarily a sports columnist, but the last 5 or 6 years at the Times, I was writing news side columns as well as sports. So I've kind of seen both sides, the fun side and the business side, and the hard news side and the joy side of Huntsville.
Yeah, what do you remember most about being a sports writer?
You know, it's still the people. And it's the silly stuff. I mean, I was really lucky to cover some huge events. I covered about 10 Final Fours and 6 Super Bowls and World Series and the Olympics in '96 and in Beijing in 2008. But it gets to be silly stuff and almost the goofy stories of traveling with a team that somebody did crazy on the road trip or just the friendships that go along. I still, one of my first major beats was covering a minor league baseball team in 1976. And I'll still hear on Facebook and email from 6 or 8 guys from that team on almost a weekly basis.
Wow.
So it's the friendships that have come along the way.
Is there anything that compares to that energy that's a part of, say, Final Four or Super Bowl? That's got to be an amazing thing.
The Final Four they're really different animals because the Final Four is typically an arena full of fans who are rooting for one of the 2 teams on the floor that night. When you go to a Super Bowl, it is such a neutral audience. It's really, they have to almost create an atmosphere in some ways because if you've got 80,000 people in the place, a great number of those people are just fans, they are sponsors, and the number of tickets that go to those avid fans, the paint your face fans, that's only maybe 10, 15,000 for each team. So the real, when it comes to football, the greatest atmosphere to me has been the national championship games. You know, the biggest stage that's been created for college football. And although there's a lot of neutral party there, it's nowhere like Super Bowl. It's still those avid fans from those 2 teams.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. In sports, of course, is a huge story in our city, in our state, in our region, and it certainly was a pleasure, I'm sure, to be able to cover that for so many years. And so fall of 2016, you take on a new role as you transition out of what you had been doing for the most part to what you're now doing for the city, which is writing a blog. And blogs really have taken off over the last, say, 5 to 10 years. What has that experience been like for you thus far?
In a lot of ways, and we're not maybe staying true to and the blog to me has always had kind of a nebulous definition anyway. It's more telling feature stories. I'm still getting to write good feature stories about good people in this city and things that go on. So probably half of the things I write are still very much like what I would write for the newspaper. They're feature stories. This week coming up on the blog, we're writing about the 2 guys who run the mailroom at City Hall. Guys that live down the dungeon basically of City Hall. That without them, the interoffice communication, as much as we all are tethered to our email, it's still a very important device that the city has, a very important purpose. So I've been able to tell a lot of really fun stories like that. Then the other side is just keeping people abreast of what's happening in the community, about events, and maybe trying, instead of just your basic 4 or 5 paragraph press release that, hey, this event's going on, to try to put a face on it, to try to featureize it a little bit more. And then some of it is just the nuts and bolts of City Hall and the services that are provided. One thing that's Scott Cardno is the new director of Natural Resources. I've written a feature about Scott and how he got involved, but with that is a companion story about, it's basically I sat there with, what do you do? What does your department do? And it's a long Q&A about what they do, about how they monitor air quality, about why it's important, about, yeah, thankfully, I guess the worst pollution problem we have around here is pollen in the spring, which is no fun, but it's a heck of a lot better than looking at the sky and seeing a yellow or khaki colored sky like you do some cities. So writing about that and what that department does.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting too, because I've been with the city now for a little more than 4 years, and of course, I spent the last 30 plus years in Huntsville looking at the city. Now that I'm inside the city, I get to see kind of like that inside perspective, and you learn a lot, you see a lot. You really begin to understand that as well as the city runs and as efficiently as it runs, that this is not just about statistics or really departments. This is really about people who come to work every day, consistently, some for, in this case, the city of Huntsville, 25, 30, 35, 40 years and more. And they do that day in and day out, and they do that because of the love of what they do. And it really makes our city the great city that we have. So when the Chamber's out promoting the good city that we have, when the Convention and Visitors Bureau is out there promoting it, even when our administrative staff is promoting it, the reality is that it takes those individuals that you now have a chance to tell those stories about. And that has to be a fascinating part of what you're doing.
It is fun because, yeah, this is not the glamour of a Final Four, but that's not why I got into the business anyway. I love to write. I love to tell stories. All this is fresh to me. And when you hear these people and you talk about all the dedicated people in the city, it's funny. I bet a dozen times I've had people say when I've asked them, you know, why do you do this? And they go, well, it's almost too hokey to say, but I like to serve people. And they're almost embarrassed to say it because it's such a cliche answer, and it certainly becomes a cliche answer in these stories if I'm not careful. But they do. It's a bunch of people who really are there because something has drawn them to the city government or to a particular specialty in that, whether it be a cop or a fireman or somebody putting their scientific brain to use when it comes to natural resources. They want to help people and they want to be of service. And I think we're very fortunate in this city. And I would have said this before I was getting a paycheck from the city, from the exposure I had. I'll certainly say it now. We're awfully fortunate to have the caliber of people we have here who are looking out for the residents.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more wholeheartedly. How has technology and modern technology changed the landscape of writing and storytelling?
It certainly has, particularly in the old business, and when it comes to just the day-to-day journalism part of things, it transformed the public from a relaxed atmosphere of, okay, I'll wait and pick up a paper in the morning, I'll see what they had to say, to this desperate need that we have now for instant news. And it's changed the landscape for the way that people, that we help through the city report the news here in Huntsville. It's just the immediacy of it that people, now the audience demands. What we're able to do because of that immediacy that's being taken care of by the standard media around here, mainstream media, to use that old cliche, is what we've been able to do with City Blog, is to still do that reflective piece that may come a couple of days later, that once you can digest the news, and once you can maybe paint a broader picture of what's going on that's more than the 400 words that somebody's limited to for AL.com or the 2 minutes on a news story on TV, that we can go a little deeper. So it's actually the changing landscape hasn't impacted City Blog nearly as much because we're a little bit old school with that and the fact that we can reflect a little bit more.
Yeah, and at the same time, you also, because you are set up the way you are, we have a city website that people can go to and that people like to go to, right. And they can click certain items and they can certainly follow us on some of the social media platforms and be able to get that information. And when we share information within the city, So I post your blog to my page and other people share that. It really gives people more access to what's going on in the city.
There's a great network, and Jessica Carlton, who does the social media for us, is unbelievable in making sure the word gets out very quickly. And even again, say it's that story that has some reflective that I haven't had to push on a deadline, we're pushing that out on social media for people to see it. Social media has become almost an advertising arm in some ways to get you, hey, come read this. You know, we'll grab you and have you come read this story. And then certainly other part of what we do is the news releases that announce things that are about to happen, where we need to get the message out, and we're letting people know that, you know, whatever news, whether it's trees are down and we're working hard to get it taken care of, to an announcement of a new company coming in town.
Do you have a formula for selecting what you blog about?
Kelly Scrimcher, my boss, has, when I started, Kelly said, I've got about 125 stories that we need to tell. And I went, well, Kelly, that's, 5 a week, that's going to run out quickly. It hasn't. That original list is probably at 100 right now is all. We haven't been able to whittle away. We'll meet once a week and we'll go over some story ideas. Kelly is terrific at coming up with ideas. Certainly, breaking news, events that happen, developments in the city will propel what we do in some ways. And then is we'll have a calendar, and it's a couple weeks ago was National Police Week. It was a great example. We see that coming. Well, that's a great hook to do a lot of stories. Certainly the guys and girls at Huntsville Police Department do a terrific job, and we've tried to write a lot about them. So we devoted 5 straight days of the city blog to police stories. So when things like that happen, we'll look for events and certain commemorations. Memorial Day obviously just passed. John Hamilton, the city administrator, did a beautiful piece about Memorial Day. John is a former colonel in the U.S. Army, so it was wonderful to do that. So we'll look for appropriate dates, times, things like that. And then some of it is, there are people in this building, under this roof on this at City Hall, that need some attention, that deserve attention for what they do. So it's time to write about them.
Yeah, I think that's great too, because again, it comes back to what you said earlier about this opportunity to humanize people and to help people connect with people. It's one of the big things I do in my job. It's moving around the city, talking with all kinds of different people who have various interests, but we all have common ground. We love the city of Huntsville. We want to see the city prosper in many ways. And I really believe with all my heart that the majority of people in this community, if not all, want to make sure that this city is better tomorrow than it is today. And I think that's so important. I think that's your opportunity to be able to tell those stories. We've got maybe a couple of minutes left in the broadcast. So I want you to take a minute maybe to tell us what you love most about City of Huntsville.
Wow. I love that this place took a smart alecky sports writer who wasn't always as funny as he thought he was and clever as he was in the column, and embraced him. And that the friendships that have developed here this becomes one of those cliche answers that I talked about a while ago. This truly has become a home. This has become a home. Met my wife Patricia here, helped her raise a couple of stepsons here, and just the involvement I've been able to have in this community, just things from beyond work, to being able to help John Stallworth on his golf tournament, which is such a great deal every year, to involvement in our church, to things like this. It's just, I think what I love about Huntsville, it's become a home, and I kind of fought that for a while even, but you can't fight City Hall, and you can't really fight Huntsville, and Huntsville decides it wants to be your home.
That's right. You can't fight it for long. I'm from New York City. I tell people all the time, but I claim Huntsville as my home. Very proud to do that, and I think that the two of us have come to find a true gem in our society, and we're very proud to be residents of Huntsville. Mark McCarter is senior writer for the city blog of the City of Huntsville. Thank you for joining us today and sharing with us. If people want to reach out to you and maybe share a story idea or just kind of, chop it up with you a little bit, how would they reach you?
Just reach me through Mark McCarter at huntsvilleal.gov, And also that's how they can get to City Blog, just the main huntsvilleal.gov webpage, or just Google City Blog and McCarter, and those things will start popping up. But I hope people people read us every day. We typically have something new every day on City Blog. Besides just being a new story, I hope it's something that's truly is new to them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mark, for being with us.
Thank you, Kenny. Always good seeing you.
Likewise. Thank you for being a part of our conversation today. We hope that you've learned lots of great information about the City Blog at the City of Huntsville, where you can find stories written by Mark McCarter, senior writer, on a daily basis. We like that. And he's doing a great job, by the way. So support the effort so that you can find out more about what's happening in your city. We'd also like you to like our Facebook page, which is Impact with Kenny Anderson, where you can see the video of the show that you've just watched, as well as behind-the-scenes shots of what happens once the camera stops rolling. For Impact, I'm Kenny Anderson. Have a great day.